Left Right USA. I am Kat, and we have Susan and a guest today named Grant. I'll let him introduce himself. But today we are going to talk about how the Trump administration's policies have had a devastating effect on science and why, as average Americans, we should care.
Mm-hmm.
So, Susan, go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll have Grant.
Yes, I'm Susan, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what we average Americans can do if we're concerned. And that all of us have some kind of practical experience. We have some kind of training. You know, there are things that we can do. There are skills we can bring to bear if we have concerns, and we can do something about it. There's millions of us. And so let's talk a little bit about, like, me. I have a bachelor's degree in agronomy, agricultural science. You and I, Kat, are both small business owners. You have your master's in marketing. You've done paralegal. You've worked for the government. And then Grant, let's let you talk about yourself and a little bit about your experience.
Sure. So I'm an architect, and I'm also a sustainability and resilience expert. I did post-professional graduate research on daylighting and thermal properties of buildings, which you wouldn't think would have anything to do with climate change. But as it so happened, I was researching the optical and thermal properties of different materials, one of which is water, which is actually, water vapor is a major greenhouse gas component itself. And so through that work, I came to understand a little bit better how the greenhouse effect works and how it relates to human-caused climate change. And that it led to a change in my career and more of a focus on those things. So not exactly an expert on climate science specifically, but I'm sort of climate adjacent.
Yes, and that's a big area in science right now, that there's so much false information out there and conspiracy theories. So I'm glad we're going to talk about that as well.
Right, exactly. So let's start off with just a little bit of a statement about what has happened to science in the last year. The Conversation is a global, independent, nonprofit news organization. It publishes articles written by university academics and researchers, but they're edited by professional journalists for the general public to make it a little more understandable. And here's what they have to say about last year. From beginning to end, 2025 was a year of devastation for scientists in the United States. January saw the abrupt suspension of key operations across the National Institutes of Health, not only disrupting clinical trials and other in-progress studies, but stalling grant reviews and other activities necessary to conduct research. Around the same time, the Trump administration issued executive orders declaring there are only two sexes and ending DEI programs. The Trump administration also removed public data and analysis tools related to health disparities, climate change, and environmental justice, among other databases, which are critical. These databases have been paid for by our tax dollars for our researchers to use. And when you remove those databases from anyone's ability to access them, you're basically saying, sorry, you don't get that benefit anymore, and neither do we as the public for whom these researchers are researching. February and March saw a steep undercutting of federal support for infrastructure critical to conducting research, as well as the withholding of federal funding from several universities, which is actually illegal.
Yes, it's
you're not supposed to be able to withhold the funding without permission from Congress, for one thing.
Right.
And you're especially illegal to try to basically strong arm any institution or state into adhering to what you want by withholding congressionally appointed federal funding. So that's illegal.
Especially for political reasons.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And Susan and I did a video specifically about the Trump's illegal impoundment
of funds.
It was in the billions. So
$425 billion at least. Yeah. So, and then over the course of the following months, billions of dollars of grants supporting research projects across many disciplines, institutions, and states were terminated, again, illegally. These include funding already spent on in-progress studies that had been forced to end before completion. Federal agencies, including NASA, the EPA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the USAID have been downsized or dismantled altogether. Again, illegal.
Legally.
Not supposed to do that. Yeah. And a lot of people are like, wait a minute, if that's so illegal, how are they able to do it? And that gets into a whole lot of other things that we've talked about in our video, but trust us, they've done it. It's not legal. It's not okay for them to do it, and it's had a devastating impact on science.
And they're counting on the fact that
passive about it.
It takes a while for it to work through the courts as well. So they're counting on the fact that there's that lag time to basically have a done deal before anybody can do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Not really the subject of our conversation today, but helpful to understand like what's happening generally.
Right.
Exactly. I think ordinary Americans should care about the Trump administration's actions against science, because these actions have direct negative consequences. I mean, you think about all of our society is based on the scientific method.
Mm-hmm.
You have a question, you form a hypothesis, you experiment, and you come to a conclusion. And, it's all based on fact. Right. And all of that's been skewed to the point where average Americans don't trust facts so much anymore.
Yeah, but it has really bad impacts on our public health,
mm-hmm.
our environmental quality, economic innovation, the reliability of the information we get on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about those public health risks and how sidelining science has compromised our ability to address public health.
Yeah.
Rolling back our air and water pollution rules is a big one.
Yeah, and chemical safety laws that increase exposure to the cancer-causing and toxic pollutants. The forever chemicals is one example.
We rolled back regulations on the PFAS chemicals, on asbestos.
Yeah.
And that's been upsetting to MAHA people as well, not just liberals.
Liberals, yeah.
So we remember, some of us, the days of like the Love Canal or Superfund sites and cleanup sites, and we don't want to go back to that just to give businesses, the license to pollute again, because it's expensive for them and cuts into their profits, and it has an impact on our health.
Yeah,
so we want to go back to those days.
Yeah, they're favoring business interests over our health.
Yeah, exactly. So then we also talk about cuts to the agencies like the National Institutes of Health, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. That's limiting our life-saving research on diseases like cancer. It hinders response to future disease outbreaks. This could be really bad, and we're seeing a lot of that with some of the stuff that RFK has been coming out with, and the increase in measles and all kinds of health issues that are starting to come into play. So you should definitely care. Then environmental degradation. I mean, whether you believe in, in climate change or not,
it's
this is having a big impact.
Yeah.
So it's been dismissing climate science. It's been removing mentions of climate change from official documents and websites. It's been curtailing environmental impact reviews, defunding related agencies and projects. It's exposing our public lands and ocean waters to risks from oil and gas drilling, increasing the likelihood of harm from extreme weather events, etc. So I know you're interested in a lot of this, Grant. So let's talk about some of these things that has happened, like in the 2009 EPA finding and how that impacts us.
Okay, help me remember to also talk about what's happening to FEMA and to weather prediction and how those impact public health as well, because those are a couple of really significant ones that people feel directly.
Yeah.
But the EPA, okay, so I have to go through a little bit of history to help people understand why this is significant. But starting in, I think, the late 60s, the Clean Air Act was passed and then strengthened in 1970, 1977, and 1990. It originally dealt with things that, like really, really obvious local pollutants that were causing asthma and killing people on a regular basis. And it was expanded to include greenhouse gases. And that was based on a 2009 endangerment finding that took the research of thousands and thousands of scientists, a whole bunch of evidence collected, saying, yeah, greenhouse gases are impacting public health. We need to regulate them as a pollutant in order to do so. That research underpinned that endangerment finding. So it was the legal basis for tying greenhouse gases to the Clean Air Act. And so this has become a target of fossil fuel interests ever since, because obviously they stand to lose quite a bit. Now, that act made it so that the federal government was required, not just empowered, but required to measure greenhouse gas emissions from particularly like major emitters like power plants, really large industrial sites, things like that. So they have to report this information. And then the federal government has the power to regulate the worst emissions as well. And so you have things like coal plants having to filter some of their emissions in order to reduce the danger from those. And it's focused not only on CO2, which we hear a lot about, but also things like sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide, both of which are really dangerous for humans. They're not just greenhouse gases, but they're also dangerous to human health.
Yeah.
So they've been trying to undermine this finding for quite a while, but it's been really difficult because the science supports the fact that greenhouse gases are a danger to public life. But most recently with this administration, they're taking two different approaches. One is to try to undermine the scientific finding itself by replacing it with one produced by 5 hand-picked contrarians. But that approach may not end up working very well for them because they were required to have a public comment period and then address any of the comments. Well, thousands of climate scientists basically had a red alert, looked at their report, tore it apart because it had massive errors in it, just basic science. It was completely wrong. And they marked it all up, and they're thinking that like they may not be able to defend the bad science that they're trying to replace the 2009 finding with. And so it's likely that they're going to pivot to just saying that the Clean Air Act was never intended to regulate greenhouse gases, and try to break that connection between the two so that they can say, well, we just don't have to regulate them at all. They have a friendly Supreme Court, and so they're kind of banking on the fact that they might favor that. You know, the founders maybe didn't think that we should be regulating pollution anyway, and so maybe they think that we shouldn't be doing that. So I just want to talk briefly about what the implications of that might be. If suddenly they were no longer required to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, then all of that reporting would be gone. Any industry, any power plant, whatever, could do whatever it wants and emit any of these these pollution to any extent. Like there would be no constraints on that unless new legislation were passed, and so it created a crisis for Congress to intervene and do something. So, of course, that's
going back to the days of acid rain.
Yeah, I mean that's just it. I mean, sulfur dioxide, nitrous oxide, they're very dangerous in their own right. They create things like acid rain. We'd be taking a major step back to, you know, the times shortly before some of us on this call were born, and we really don't want to do that. We really should not do that. It's not in the public interest to do so.
Yeah.
But that's what this administration is attempting to do. So that's that one. That's very urgent. That's going on. Do you want to pivot maybe to talk a little bit about weather prediction and NASA and all of that now?
Yeah, sure. Let's go up the weather, the satellites, etc.
Yeah, so this one's been kind of shocking, just the extent to which the administration has been willing to go. And behind a lot of this is Russ Vought, who runs the, Office of
Management and Budget.
OMB, yeah. So he's the budget guy, because he can just kind of cut people off and
illegally.
Illegally kill programs, and he's
Yeah.
not allowed to do so, even though it's unconstitutional.
According to Project 2025.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they made no secret about what they were going to do, but I think people have been shocked that they're actually doing it. That it wasn't just a polemical document. They're actually executing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Russ Vogt particularly thinks that anything having to do with climate is just nonsense, and so he's undercutting agencies and programs that have anything to do with it. Even programs that are not just about predicting future climate and understanding historic climate, but literally just weather prediction. So
Yeah.
they killed funding for a bunch of weather monitoring stations so that we don't have as good of coverage throughout the United States as we used to for literally just like storm prediction, which is just crazy.
Stuff. Yeah.
So he's trying to slash the budget for NOAA, which does a lot of that stuff as well as climate research, and is particularly hitting the climate science side of things. NASA has significant components that support that work as well, and most recently, NCAR, which is based out of Colorado, was established in the 1960s, back when climate research was really in its infancy, and they've got supercomputers hosted there that run these gigantic climate models that help with weather prediction and all of those things. It's really kind of the nerve center for climate research, really for the entire world. And he's trying to basically destroy that entire program. And I've seen scientists just all over the place, just up in arms about it, because it's willfully stupid to make our capabilities, make people less safe, to make us less able to predict weather, to make us less able to understand what's going on.
Well, and to destroy the capability, the National Center for Atmospheric Research, it sounds like it has a key portion of worldwide capability for this type of modeling and for understanding what's happening with the weather, much less, greenhouse gases or anything like that. We want to know what's happening with severe weather storms. We want to understand, when is the hurricane coming, who's in danger, who needs to evacuate. All of that is modeled at that center.
Right. So you have politically motivated individuals who are so against anything having to do with climate that they're willing to destroy science infrastructure in order to do so. Just because they see facts and science and evidence as a challenge to their political agenda. It's like a political threat, and so they're dealing with it in political ways. But that hurts everyone, because it's public health, it's public safety.
Right.
Exactly.
What else?
We wanted to talk about climate scientists' ability to research and even report about NSF cuts, gagging of their ability to do that.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the National Science Foundation. And now that's broader than just climate science. The National Science Foundation, I don't think people realize like how important it is. It's not just any other institution, and we wouldn't notice if they're gone. The National Science Foundation is the world's biggest sponsor of scientific research across the board of all topics. And so, the U.S. up until now has had a leading role in science throughout the world. Post-war, Europe was devastated. They didn't really have the capabilities, and many of the world's leading experts immigrated to the U.S. and became part of the U.S. scientific infrastructure. That's why we developed the atomic bomb and nuclear power and all kinds of things. It's because we took the experts into the U.S. and ran with it, and it's been that way ever since, and that's been the foundation of the United States wealth.
Yeah.
We're now driving those people away, and I think it's important that people understand that. That'll have impacts to our well-being, not just others. So National Science Foundation, I just learned that 50% of the staff at NSF have left or are leaving.
Wow.
So, and it's the impact is going to be even worse than that, though, because they're changing how NSF interacts with other researchers who aren't directly part of the NSF organization. It used to be that they would manage grants and funds for particular areas of research, but then they would appoint groups of subject matter experts to review other people's research, to do various functions. So it had a multiplier effect in terms of effectiveness, and they were able to leverage the expertise that's available throughout all the world. Now the administration is saying, well, only people within the NSF can do the reviewing. At least that was the last I heard. Everything has to go through a final political appointee who could, kind of pull the kill switch on things we don't like at any given point. So what that does is throttle way back the amount of research that can be done. And this is at a time, I'm not sure if people are aware of this, but with the advent of very finely detailed genetic editing tools, they were super close to curing a whole bunch of kinds of cancer. For example, some of which have already been rolled out. Like there was a lot of really, really good imminent research that was happening, and all of that has been halted or disrupted in some way because of Russ Vought's choices that he's making.
Because they won't get the funding unless it's approved by the in-house political person.
Yeah, well, first he tried impounding across the board. Then they fired a jillion people without any consideration for like what they were doing. Like we had nuclear experts who were fired, and that was a problem. They had to hire them back.
Yeah.
With the NSF, yeah, because now it's like starting to trickle back out, but it's not clear what funding has been turned loose. So a lot of things are still in limbo.
And sometimes they say they've restored funding, and then you check it, it turns out they haven't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like you said, they disrupted
that cancer research it does not have to do with the COVID vaccine, allowing the cancer cells to actually be exposed to the immune system.
It's not directly COVID related, although I think what I was referring to was the CRISPR gene editing tool. In the past, we didn't really have the tool to be able to like remove this piece and put this piece in, and so so the process of developing like immune therapy for things was extremely expensive and error prone, and it would take decades to develop something.
But now it's quicker.
Yeah, with CRISPR gene editing, it's nothing scary. It's just like if something's broken or if you need to come up with like a therapeutic treatment for something, they can basically build what they need to build, and it's really fast. It's a matter of like months or a couple of years or something like that, and you can come out with a new treatment. And so this revolution just happened within like the past few years that it started to be applied, and there was a lot of really good research that was going on, and like Russ Vogt doesn't care. They just want power. So I think it's important that people just kind of understand. It's like, your grandma who's like dying of cancer, like maybe wouldn't if some of this stuff were rolled out, and the folks who are in charge who are halting all of this work just absolutely do not care.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's being muzzled, it's being throttled down, basically, and people's scientists' ability to collaborate and to be able to multiply the effort is being squashed.
Yeah, that's been a big one. So let me talk about that briefly. I don't know the status, but I think it may still be the case that federal scientists who are actually employees of the federal government are prohibited from using certain terms, like anything that could possibly be DEI term, like woman. They're not allowed to use, much less use as the basis of their research. A lot of climate-related terms are also prohibited. And these people are leading experts throughout the world, and so for them to be completely unable to do their work is a disaster. And so what that means in terms of the United States scientific capabilities is many of these people are leaving. They're leaving the States and they're going elsewhere. They're taking their talents elsewhere, and so that work's gonna serve some other economy, not ours.
Right.
So it's just really, really quite shocking what's happening, and so I try to follow a whole bunch of different scientists on various social media other than the toxic ones, and it's been really disturbing. And these are the most mild-mannered, non-demonstrative, non-political people that you can possibly imagine. They just want to do their work. They just want to help people, and they're shocked at what's happening.
Yeah, and we're going to see the repercussions. Exactly. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about wind and solar energy. and kind of what some of the effects have been on that.
Yeah. So that's kind of a mixed bag. I think they will be unable to stop some things from going forward just because, I don't know if people know, but onshore, meaning land-based wind and solar power are both now the cheapest forms of electricity generation that you can possibly put up. And that's without subsidies. And it's just because the cost has come down and down and down as we've gotten so much better and you've developed economies of scale in these technologies. So the subsidies that we've had over the past couple of decades to develop these technologies have now reached the point where the market is finally mature. Fossil fuel interests see that as a huge threat. That's partly why they put a bunch of money behind this administration. That's why they're attacking wind and solar.
Yeah.
Wind and solar was going to be sort of, and was briefly, turbocharged in the United States because of the Inflation Reduction Act, which created a whole bunch of incentives, not just for like families to put on rooftop solar, but also like in manufacturing, US-based manufacturing, developers, just like all the way up and down the supply chain, so that we would have those capabilities in-house within the United States.
And
So
it was creating a bunch of jobs.
a lot of jobs, a lot of jobs.
Especially in red states.
Yeah, in a growing
So when you
growing
say a
industry.
lot of jobs, is that tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of jobs? What do you guys know? What
I don't know the amount.
I'm not sure.
It's huge.
I remember reading a couple of news stories about how many jobs got lost in just the solar area. Oh, actually, I do have that written down. Through September, the United States lost 21,000 jobs last year in solar and wind, and 15,000 of those were in red states. And that was $24 billion in announced investments as well. So it's had a major impact.
It'll be a lot more now that the incentives have ended at the end of 2025. So now they're going to start laying off a ton of installers. I'm concerned as well just about a manufacturing capability because these were growing industries. There's like the trajectory for wind and solar is only upward, but the United States is basically choosing to opt out of all of that and to just give all of that to China. So now China has all that weakness. It's not all negative though. Like I said, before this happened, wind and solar was already becoming cheaper. And so I think you're still going to see, at least at the utility scale, a lot of installations. In fact, investor-owned utilities prefer wind and solar because they're cheaper. It's cheaper for them to install. It's faster to get them deployed because it's simpler technology. You don't have to build an entire power plant. And so there are a lot of reasons why, that even with these political headwinds, they're still going forward with it to the extent that this administration allows them to. Now, Donald Trump, I think because of his golf courses, has decided that offshore wind is just, we just can't have it. And so they're just unilaterally canceling projects that were already underway for purely political reasons.
Yeah, I've heard him talk about windmills and it's just kind of weird.
I mean, that's stuff that he's saying.
The windmills and how they
they sort of
or something wildlife.
Yeah, they've made up justifications, but basically it's because he's chosen and has said that he doesn't want them to happen, and so there will be or are already lawsuits over this because some of these projects were literally under construction already. So it's just shocking. It's not going to be as huge an effect as some of these other things because onshore wind and solar, I think, have enough support that they can't stop it. But it's really unfortunate for offshore wind and solar, or offshore wind.
Well, and like you said, the manufacturing capacity. If people are concerned about the U.S. having its own manufacturing capacity and not having to rely on other countries, let's not X this. We need this here.
Yes. Well, and some plants were just getting up and running, I think, this past year. We now have in-house solar manufacturing capabilities, I think, from throughout the supply chain, but it's on a very, very small scale. And at a time when this administration is doing everything they can to kill the industry. So it's really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And it's also not in the interests of consumers specifically. So one of the nice things that there was about rooftop solar is once it's installed, you're insulated from rate increases because maybe say you have a net metering agreement or something, or maybe you've got batteries, then you have some cost stability in a situation where you've got data centers that are driving up electricity costs for everyone.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, but I think there are vested interests in particularly fossil fuels and investor-owned utilities to make sure that any new capabilities don't happen at the distributed level, at the consumer level. They want to be the ones making those capital investments because then they can charge their customers for that. And so it's just really unfortunate, and it's a complete reversal of what the Biden administration was doing.
Yeah, and a lot of people have seen their electricity costs go up, and that's going to happen even more with the increased demand for electricity that AI is going to bring. And so if you're interested in being off grid or not having as much electrical costs, you should be concerned about these issues.
Yes. I actually follow this pretty closely. I used to work at a coal power plant, so I've seen both sides of it. And it's really concerning that there are experts in the field who say we literally don't know how we're going to meet this demand if any of these, if all of these AI data centers go forward. And it's really hard for people to project how many of those are going to actually go forward. But the sudden increase in electricity demand is so great that they literally don't know how we're going to meet that demand, even with an all of the above strategy. But certainly if you eliminate the two cheapest options, that
which
would be
is solar and wind.
Yeah, like that's not going to help customers, certainly.
No, it's going to increase your prices because all these companies that want to make the AI plants are going to be buying up your local electric utility so they can expand it, and your prices are going to go up because they're going to pass that cost on to you.
Yeah, and that's often how it works. So at least with investor-owned utilities, they're regulated by the state, but it's sort of lightly regulated. So the way that they can make more money and increase their income is by making capital investments. So they want more plants, they want more transmission line, they want all of that stuff on their side of the table because they can then charge that to their existing customers and meet new customers' needs. So the data center boom is a boon to them, and they want to be the ones putting all that stuff in, but it's not in the interest of regular consumers.
No, and I mean we all like AI and the sorts of things AI can do, although it's going to have an impact on jobs. But but we should be able to have some say in like what kind of noise pollution, what kind of emissions, if they're trying to develop electricity with natural gas turbines in your backyard, they're raising your electrical costs. You want to be able to have a say at the local and the state level in those decisions, and to be able to say, hey, state officials, we want these AI companies to pay for these improvements. We don't want to be paying for the improvements, by giving them tax breaks and letting them pollute our local neighborhoods. Let's make them pay for that stuff and make sure they site themselves somewhere where they're not sucking up all of our water from our wells. And, we want to have a say.
Well, and we're straying from the science thing, but you make a good point, and it's important that people understand that this administration is trying to make it so that only the federal government can decide what regulations will apply to AI whatsoever. They're trying to prohibit the states from imposing any regulations, while at the same time the federal government is saying, no, I mean, do whatever you want. In fact, we'll invest in your companies and then favor those specific companies so that we all make a lot of money because we don't care about the consumers.
Exactly.
So there's a real, there's a corrupt self-dealing interest that's going on and a really dangerous threat to states who are trying to do the right thing and address the concerns that their constituents have. So that's something that people just need to be aware of.
Yeah, exactly. We need to have some local input.
Well, and if we had a functioning federal government, I think I'd be less concerned because these things would be happening at that level. But because of this institutional capture, none of that's happening. They're not working.
Well, I think we need to think about how we as voters have more say with our local officials, even our state officials, than we do with the national ones. We can make an impact quicker there. And so if somebody tried to say, oh, well, states can't regulate this, then we have less immediate say on what we want to have happen in our state. And I think that's something we should all keep in mind.
Over the next 3 years or so, I think you can expect there to be a lot of battles around that, where the federal government is going to attempt to preempt the states and local governments from doing things, even things that were traditionally in their power to do so.
Right.
Probably try to do an end run over us, and we'll have to push back and see if we can protect ourselves.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about economics. Federal funding is critical to academic research that drives innovation and economic growth. So the proposed and actual cuts to science and research funding have led to job losses, canceled research grants, a brain drain of scientists that we've talked about. It doesn't just affect our science, it affects business. So companies don't want to invest, they don't want to hire new people when no one knows what the government's going to do.
Yeah.
A lot of this research is not something that's cost effective for some company to do. They don't have an incentive to fund that research that will cure your cancer because it's not cost effective.
Basic scientific research can be.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these federal funds are critical for our science.
Well, and there is a benefit to the public. If you look at the dollars input and then compare that to the dollars of economic growth that result from whatever's developed as a result of that science, it's a really good investment.
Yeah.
It's not like they're taking money out of our pockets and it just goes away, or they're giving it away to somebody else. It benefits the American economy, and it benefits American consumers.
Yeah.
I put together just a short and partial list of technologies that have resulted from federal science research in the post-war period, and you'll recognize a lot of these. Nuclear energy, internet, semiconductors, GPS, computers, supercomputers, flu shots, MRIs, lasers, LEDs, and solar photovoltaics, radar, microwaves, search engines, fracking, aviation and space flight, hybrid corn, a whole slew of genetic technologies, cellular phones, lithium batteries, and so forth. I don't think people quite realize, because nobody is around from the pre-World War II period, but following World War II, we made a choice to invest in science and technology. People remember the GI Bill, but they may not realize as well that the federal government chose to invest in basic science, and that's made us extremely, extremely wealthy as a nation. There's a reason why we're doing better than anybody else. It's because of the science.
Yeah.
If you suddenly remove support for science, that goes away.
Yeah. And when you look at studies, spending on science leads to more money for the economy. Many studies. There's just one that I looked at that stated that investments in science have historically generated returns of 150 to 300%. So every dollar of funding generates $2.50 in the local economic activity. Right. So this is it to our benefit, even if you're just looking at dollars and cents and not at all the other benefits that we get.
Right. Well, and some people might say, well, that's very well and good, but that only serves the economy right around where that university is located, where those people are doing that research or whatever. But that's really not true. Many of these technologies have made all of our lives better. In many cases, have saved lives. And so there's direct benefit as a result of the innovation that's done. But there's also broader economic effects when a new technology comes out. It makes everyone,
Whole industries arise from it.
it makes us more effective. Like
Yeah.
each hour of labor that I spend or that you spend is made more effective as a result of many of these technologies. And so for us to say, well, I don't know where this research is going to go or how it's going to pan out is not a good reason to cut that funding off. Like
Well, because historically we have seen the benefit from it.
Yeah.
Even things that we didn't know were going to pan out have over history.
Well, and you can't. I mean, that's the nature of exploration or research is like you don't know where the next innovation is going to come from, but historically we've just seen this amazing trajectory, and so if you want more good, then you need to double down on what's causing the good, and that's science.
Yeah, exactly. So just a little bit more about how the attack on science will kind of affect us. One thing is compromise safety standards. So if you disband independent science advisory committees, you replace experts with industry representatives, the fox guarding the hen house, then we have weakened the basis for regulations that are designed to protect us at work, at home, workplace injuries, food safety, all of that.
I have a good example of that.
What's that?
This was the one that I shared with you the other day, Susan, where the man who discovered that leaded gasoline was poisoning everyone.
Oh yeah.
He was trying to understand the age of the Earth by studying the radioactive decay of certain certain materials. So like I think it's uranium turns into lead over time, and it's a predictable period of time. But he was having trouble because he was getting weird baseline measurements everywhere he took measurements, and he thought, well, it's as if everything were sort of dusted with lead, and that can't be right. And he did a bunch of research, and it was, of course, federally supported research to try to figure this out. And he ultimately discovered that it was the lead that they were putting in gasoline that was poisoning every surface on the Americas, to the point where everybody's blood had like shocking levels, dangerous levels of lead in them. And the other scientists whose funding came specifically from the industry pushed back, and they were urged to push back by the industries that were threatened by the research that he was doing. And there was this whole political tug of war, and some of his funding was taken away, but he persisted, and ultimately he prevailed. And because of that, we got rid of leaded gasoline, and the amount of lead in everybody's blood dropped by several 100% within like a decade or something like that. So that's just one example of it was sort of peripheral to the work that he was originally doing, but because of this federally funded research where he was impartial and he was just following the facts, he was able to discover a huge public health danger that others didn't even understand, and was able to really make people quite a bit safer. And it would have taken longer otherwise, partly because of the sort of self-dealing interests when your funding comes from an industry that depends on continuing to pollute.
Well, a lot of people might not even know that. I mean, they don't even know why we say unleaded gasoline.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah. Well, and so like just briefly, there are other things that we don't currently regulate that some scientists have indicated are dangerous for us, and we don't really know what they all are. You've heard about microplastics. They're currently researching, trying to understand, like, what is the impact of the fact that whatever percent of my brain is now plastic? Like, we're still trying to figure that out.
Me.
Yeah, it's like we may need to get on top of that as soon as we understand exactly what it's doing to us. PFAS is another one. It's a forever chemical that's in Teflon and a whole bunch of other things. It's in like flame retardants, for example. And so there are a lot of sites that are quite polluted with PFAS. It can be found in our drinking water. And that's kind of where the struggle is happening right now, where we know enough to know that it's dangerous and is causing like genetic abnormalities and things like that. And so we were on the verge of regulating it at the federal level, but now we have an administration that's in the pocket of industry interests, and so they're trying to kill that. But it's actively killing people right now. We really need some impartiality, and federally funded basic science helps to.
And I think some of it comes down to we need to be able to trust what we're getting as far as science goes, because us ordinary people are concerned if some chemical is killing us. We need to know the truth about that. And how do you arrive at the truth? Do you arrive at the truth by firing people who are studying it and bringing in industry experts? I don't think so. That doesn't make any sense. People need to be able to trust what we're getting, the information we're getting.
Wellness influencers who have no scientific background.
Yeah, I mean, do we really want to go back to like kind of a dark ages type thing where it's like, well, this person that I trust tells me I should, do this for my health, so I guess I'll try that and let's see what happens. No, we want some evidence.
Right.
Expertise has made us healthy and wealthy. We cannot go away from expertise.
Yeah.
Whatever you think about, who so and so maybe failed us in this, that, or the other. Like, broadly speaking, the system of science and expertise and relying on facts, it has led us to be the wealthiest, healthiest nation on earth, and we cannot go away from that.
No, we really can't.
Agree.
Yep. So when we talk about money, we're like, okay, maybe we agree that we do need to fund science and we need to protect that. Some people would say, shouldn't we be cutting spending? We have a $38 trillion national debt. So let's talk a little bit about how much we actually spend on science. So I was looking at 2024 numbers because 2025 was so messed up. We had $209 billion proposed to be spent on federal research and development.
Which sounds like a lot.
Right. But since the U.S. 2024 budget was $6.8 trillion, that was actually 3% of our total budget. And interestingly, that includes Department of Defense spending.
Yeah, much less research. Otherwise.
Yeah, because Department of Defense got 45% of that in 2024, and Health and Human Services got 24%. So the top 6 R&D research agencies accounts for like 95% of that funding, but it's only 3% of our federal budget. And we've been talking about how much benefit we get from that little 3%.
That 3% makes money.
Yes.
A lot of other stuff doesn't.
Let's not cut the stuff that makes money and makes us healthier. Exactly.
I don't have it in front of me anymore. Do you remember the statistic for like the National Science Foundation? Because I want to say it was either 1% or 0.1% of the
I think
budget.
It was not. The National Science Foundation was like number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth down the list or something like that. It wasn't even that much.
So it was like less than 1% of the total federal budget, and yet it's like literally curing cancer.
Yeah. Exactly. Let's keep that funded. Let's do that. And so I think let's talk a little bit about this pattern of attacking science and education. Is it something we've seen before in history? Why would a government do something that's so obviously harmful to the country and axing, just a tiny bit of money that we spend on science that makes us so much money, that makes us so much healthier? Why would they attack it?
Because the short-term gains. So I think it might be a situation where someone decides that it is more important that they themselves be the king of a smaller hill than just a somebody on a much larger hill where everybody else has a say. So right now we've got a situation where we had a pandemic. We've got issues where, our economy, rural markets, for example, are sort of, it's the tail wagged by the dog of major metropolitan areas where there's lots of, investment, lots of capital going on, that people feel like people far away from me are making a lot of decisions that are impacting my life, and I don't like that, so I'm just taking it back. Well, you've got people who rode that wave of sentiment and are taking advantage of that and using that to consolidate power, not for the benefit of those who gave them that power in the first place, but just so that nobody can assail them. And the danger that science and scientists pose to that is scientists are interested in the truth and only the truth, and they don't care anything else. And so they'll just say, well, the evidence says this, and you said that, but I mean, here's what the evidence says. And so when you have somebody who's like that, that's a threat.
Yeah, it's inconvenient to a group that just wants to be in power.
Right.
And
It's
doesn't
a
really
political
care
threat.
about people's well-being.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The narrative of the authoritarian type of governments and challenges that consolidation of authority that you're talking about, Grant.
Right.
Facts are inconvenient and seen as the political challenge of that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of these scientists aren't even trying to be political. They're just saying,
this
is what I'm finding.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but like, I did this study and it says this, and now like people are giving me death threats.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's important to think about, if you're one of those people that feels marginalized by people far off making decisions, do you feel like you've been brought any more into the decision-making process? Is your voice being listened to? Are you being brought into that process anymore right now? Yeah. Or are you still being ignored?
Yeah, are the tech bro oligarchs who are now in power, are they actually advancing your interests, or did they just take you for a ride?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at that and say, look, we are the people, we're in charge. I think we have to think about this. There's 350 million of us. That's a lot of people. And I think for so long, we have fallen away from the idea that we, the people, have a voice in our government. We think if the government is something that is going to do what government does, people are always, lying. They're always blaming the other side. They don't really seem to get much done that affects me. But we have lost the understanding that we are the ones who can create the government that we want. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of work, but I mean, you think about, we revere, the revolutionaries who created the United States, but what they did, it was hard. It was dangerous. It took a long time. It was a lot of stops and starts and things that worked and then didn't work, and they had to revamp and try again. And I think a lot of us are starting to realize that we have a part to play. If we want a better government, we need to make a better government.
So,
not just going back to where it was before this administration, it's making something better in the future.
But how? I mean, what can citizens do? I mean, you say we can do things. What can we do, though, Susan? We have a nice things.
It used to make me really mad when I'd hear like a Democrat congressperson or something say, "Oh, well, there's not much we can do. It's really up to the people." I'm like, what? But he was right, Okay, so things we can do, right? Well, we're doing one of the things right now. We're ordinary people, ordinary experience, some professional training, whatever. We're talking about the issues. We're helping educate people. We're learning ourselves about keeping informed about what's actually going on, right? So
talk about that.
Talking about to the people we know about the issues that we learn about that are concerning, so they understand what's going on. That's one thing that we can do.
Yeah. I use an app called 5 Calls on my phone, and I call my congressman. I call my rep here in Utah. We can urge our urge Congress to intervene with specific legislation, push back on the ones that we don't like,
Yeah.
and help increase our oversight. We can call them.
And they have said that it does make a difference. It may just be like how many total people are calling me about this issue. Like, there's a lot of people calling me, so I should be concerned about this. But it does make a difference. We are supposed to oversee our legislators and say, okay, I like what you're doing. I don't like what you're doing. They should be doing what we want them to do, right? They're working for us. And so we need to make that known. So constantly calling, pressuring, emailing, whatever you want, however you want to do it, it makes a difference. Keep it up. Pressure those people.
We could talk a little bit about our information system, our news media. Thought over the years. There's a quote from Thomas Jefferson that I like. He said something about how an informed electorate basically cannot be led astray.
Yeah.
As long as they're well informed. I think what's changed in recent years is that we are less well informed because of the degradation of our news ecosystem and the way that we get information. So it's all well and good for me to call my member of Congress and say, well, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, but am I right? Am I acting on good information? There's a saying that I like: good information makes for good inspiration. And I think that's true. It's really important for us to seek the facts, to try to understand what's really going on, and make sure that we're establishing our opinions based on actual factual evidence. And we have to start to suspect some of our sources of information when they prove to be wrong over and over and over again.
Right.
I don't want to get too political, but I have noticed with great alarm just in the last couple of years, as we've seen major news outlets be bought out by companies that are owned by, it turns out, some tech oligarch who has financial interests and has a financial incentive to get on the good graces of the administration because some merger that they want to do is pending approval by the federal government. And so many times they have so much money that for them, buying CBS or the Wall Street Journal or whatever, any one of those major news companies, it's a drop in the bucket for them. It's small relative to their other financial interests. And so they're willing to sacrifice the integrity of the information that you and I consume in exchange for financial benefit and quid pro quo with the current administration.
And on the other hand, we're getting more independent media, which is good, but some people are in it for the sensationalist click, want to get more views, want to get the clicks, so we'll just put out a bunch of sensationalist stuff, the National Enquirer type, right?
Well, or like the, YouTube influencers that got millions and millions of followers because they talk about clickbait stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a real concern.
And I think that different generations of us have patterns of where we get our news, right? Like maybe our parents' generation, they were used to a news system which was basically vetted for you, right? Because back in the day, you didn't get your information on the news unless it was somewhat vetted, right? But that's no longer the case.
No.
Unfortunately.
Not
so
at all.
I think the younger generation, at least in my experience, do a fairly good job of understanding that not everything you're going to see is necessarily true. At least the young people I know do a fairly, they understand that.
They know that people are lying to them. They don't necessarily have the tools, though, to figure out what is the truth.
I guess it depends on what you mean by younger, but yeah, exactly. So I think they understand that, though, that you really should fact check. And then there's kind of those of us, I guess, in the middle who we're kind of an interesting generation because I think we grew up with the previous news system, which was pre-vetted. We came into the internet age, and then we've learned to use the internet. So there's a lot out there about what an average person can do to kind of just quickly fact check.
Yes.
And then if you do that a few times and you find your information source is accurate, then maybe you don't have to do it every single time because
and
you
it's
see they have a
suggestion.
track record. Yes.
And I know it's a little bit contrary to this medium that we're using right now, but I have this theory, and that is that those who get their information only from verbal and heard, like, radio and videos, basically, if they're getting their information only from those sources make it harder for you to fact check things.
Yeah.
Unless it's something you can pause and you're actually going to pause and go and double check something.
And check the documents, the court
Right.
proceedings, the court transcripts.
Government reports.
Because the flow of conversation can be such that you're not, like, they're just sneaking things in there that, like, it might be mixed with factual things, and because of the flow, you're not going to go back and check things. Whereas in written form, I mean, I'm a big fan of reading your news, because you can say, wait a minute, that's not right, and you can go check it real quick and realize, oh, this person is lying right here, and it completely changes the thesis of this article that I'm reading. It gives you the ability to sort of, like, you're in control. So video's great, and I think it's valuable, but you can hit pause. Pause. Like, if you don't like what I'm saying right now, like, go look it up. Just be careful with your sources.
And the sources provided in the description of the video that you've watched. Look at their links.
Right.
Research it. And see, that's what, when you go to university, when you go to college, they teach you how to do that. They teach you how to fact check. They teach you how to find valid resources and sources whenever you write a research paper. And that's another reason why I believe this administration is also attacking education.
Yeah, but anyone can learn to check your sources. You could, it's kind of a matter of practical sense, but that's something that we can do as citizens, is we can change our habits so that we do some fact checking, right? So we know if what we are learning is actually real or not.
I've seen a lot of really fun memes where, some influencers said some outrageous thing, and then in the community notes, like, a whole bunch of ordinary citizens have said, that's not true, actually this, and this.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, well, that's democracy in action, where
it is.
The bad actors, instead of just hijacking everyone's brains, others come back and say, actually, that's not true.
Let's crowdsource our fact checking.
Yeah, I mean, it's no coincidence that Elon Musk, for example, has attacked Wikipedia. And has tried to come up with an alternative to it that he can control, because Wikipedia is crowdsourced in such a way that it's difficult for someone to gain entire control of it and to misuse it for their own personal interests. Because it's so distributed. Like, all of those ordinary moms and pops and people like me are like, no, actually, I looked this up and that's wrong, and you can correct it, and the process for that.
Yeah.
And people need to put their energy behind platforms that enable that kind of self-correction. Yeah. Democracy itself is supposed to be self-correcting, and normally it is. It's only when you have sort of authoritarian influences that sort of break the system.
Hijack that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we really, really need to think about the strength and power that we all have, like you mentioned, Susan, 350 million of us, to say, wait a minute, that's not right. And if we do
what we want,
right, right. Well, and maybe I may want something that's not right, but hopefully I can correct that, as long as I have a sense of, like, okay, this is true, this is not. Is it really right for us to go for this, or is this actually what we really want? If we stay engaged and kind of push through the slime. They try to make it such a toxic environment that people don't want to participate in that. But if we push through, we can kind of create the environment that we want.
So far we've talked about trying to figure out if the news you're getting is real or not. Make sure you have the facts. We've talked about bothering your legislators about what you think is right and not right. Go to your town halls if they have them. Talk to the candidates. When people are trying to get elected, they're very willing to talk to you because they want your vote. That's a very good time to go talk to these people and ask them questions about things that are important to you. So take the time to go. We talked
Some
about
people.
talking to people you know. We haven't talked about voting, but voting, you need to go vote. I hear
Every
people
time.
say,
Yeah.
I hear people say, I don't think my vote makes a difference. Well, if you don't think your single vote makes a difference, go talk to some of your friends. Go talk to your family. Say, let's all go vote. Let's have a vote party, and maybe get 10 people to come vote. It
Yeah.
makes a difference. It adds up. They want you to think your vote doesn't make a difference. But as somebody I was listening to said, if it didn't make a difference, why would we be trying so hard to get you to not vote?
Right, exactly. I mean, it makes such a difference. You see currently that even some of the GOP legislators are helping to override the admin currently.
Yeah.
Because of the pressure
because of the pushback
with Americans.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to share a quick anecdote. So when Trump was elected, this most recent time, I wanted to understand like kind of what's going on, like what's happening in the U.S., and I wanted to compare it to an earlier period. So I went and found Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, which he wrote in the 1830s. And so he was from France, and he came to the U.S. to basically study how democracy in America works, because it was really different than in France, where they had these like crazy power struggles, and then like somebody new would come in power and they'd kill everyone. It was really bad. From the French Revolution on, they'd had this sort of chaotic sort of situation that we're now starting to experience. So I wanted to understand like what's different. And the passages that were most striking for me was where he was talking about the sheer huge number of local associations, is what he called them. In every community in the States. Like everyone was involved, everyone was super politically engaged, they were all involved in social organizations. And he said there were like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of newspapers everywhere. Everybody read something, and there were millions of different options to choose from, and they were not owned by a single individual. And those two things, I think, comprise the most striking difference between a very healthy America in the 1830s and the America that we have right now, where your sources of information are consolidated by interests who are not, you don't have your interests at heart, and participation, voter participation, association participation is really, really low.
Yeah,
so we really just need to lean into those two things.
Yeah, I agree, and we're seeing that right now with we're having like industries, associations get together and like fight back against, say, some of the health stuff, or some of the former people who used to work in national intelligence and stuff. They're getting together and
the steady state,
banding together to give information to people, right? Retired or fired Justice Department attorneys and judges are getting together. They've formed that not-for-profit law organization that is fighting back against some of the illegal stuff going on. So we can band together, and we have skills, we have knowledge, we can fight back. So where is your sphere of influence? Do you belong to an association? Do you have some practical experience that you can offer? Get together with some people and do something. It's not just, oh, well, they're going to do what they're going to do. No, we're going to do what we're going to do. So we have hope.
Well, and people find one another really fast.
Feel so helpless.
Yeah. But
well,
we
and
don't have to be.
Yeah, when a community is threatened, if people get involved because they're like, oh man, like I got to do something, and then they find others who are similarly minded, and before you know it, you're in really good shape. So I live in a community that was devastated by a flood almost 20 years ago. And I read a bunch of stuff on like the follow-up of what the community learned, what happened. And there was a sociologist who did a little paper about our community and said, because of that disaster and all of the different people who came out of that and formed groups and did what they could to help the community recover, the social network of the community is a lot stronger now, because it was like an immune response to this threat. And I think we should be seeing right now something similar, where everyone who's just kind of been sitting back and let national politics do what it does, we're saying, oh wait, this is impacting everyone now. this is impacting public health, it's impacting science, it's impacting all of these things. I have to get involved, and we're all finding one another and we're making it happen.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, there is hope.
Yeah.
We can have the kind of government we want. It's going to be a lot of work, but let's all take a little bit of time out of our schedules, a little bit of effort to do the little things that we can, even if it's just like teaching your kids about the Constitution. Something, there's something we can all do, and 350 million of us put together can do a lot.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It can make a big difference, especially, with the topic of this call and protecting our health and protecting science.
Right, because that impacts us all. Yeah.
And that's real quick plug. So the NCAR, for example, a lot of these topics are something that you can move your member of Congress on. They recognize they're institutionalists enough that they know that the destruction of science is something that they have to intervene on. That it can't be something that was on their watch where they were abetting that. So if enough people say, hey, wait a minute, what are you doing? Like, we're going to vote you out if you don't do something about this. They have intervened on some of these, and they will intervene on all of them if we insist that they do.
The Senate has already resisted some of the defunding of the National Institute of Health.
Right.
Some of the agencies, instead of slashing it 40%,
right.
They protected the funding for HIV, AIDS prevention, and improved an increase in the budget for the health and human services sector. So
we need to keep up the pressure because they will hear us.
Yeah. I agree. Okay, so I think we've concluded there is hope.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's great to talk to you all today.
Grant, for us as well. We appreciate your guest appearance here.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. So I guess let's say if you have a comment, if you have a question, drop it in our comments below or email us.
And is there something you'd like us to talk about in the future? Let us know. Yeah.
And check out our Facebook, our Blue Sky, our Substack accounts to help keep informed and get updates.
Press the like button, hit subscribe, and help get the word out. And welcome.
Welcome to the conversation.